Most Xyz monsters have to detach the materials as cost to use their effects, but in this video we're going to go over the best Xyz monsters that actually detach materials as their effects resolve, which allows monsters that trigger when sent to the graveyard as card effect to trigger their floating effects, among a few other niche interactions. And at number 10, we have Tiras, Keeper of Genesis, a rank 5 light fairy Xyz that can be made with generic materials. Its effects are that it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and at the end of the battle phase, if it participated in a battle, it can pop a card your opponent controls. Also, during each of your end phases, it has the effect to detach one Xyz material from itself. Tiras was one of the first rank 5s released in the game alongside its dark counterpart, Adris, and it helped cement the rank 5 toolbox as one of the strongest of the Xyz era. This card would often generate you a ton of value due to its protection making it immune to lots of common back row from the time, and its beefy stat line at 2600 making it unlikely to be destroyed by battle either. Windups were the first meta deck to abuse this card really well due to how easy it is to go into rank 5s with Windup Shark. When the artifact monsters came out and began to be splashed into almost every deck, so did Tiras, even if there were many more rank 5 options by then, such as Volcasaurus. Eventually, with the release of Rank Up Force Astral Force, this card also became a popular option in rank 3 decks to go on top of Mecha Equip Engineer. The one time Tiras detaching for effect at the end of your turn was almost relevant was in Shaddoll decks, who could make it with Beast and Winda, and then finally detach Beast to draw a card, but more often than not, the extra deck was too tight to include it. In the modern metagame though, this card's protection isn't nearly as threatened as it once was, and any that can go into rank 5s has countless other cards I'd want to end on before Tiras. However, at least this card still has a niche as a decent Zeus enabler that plays around destruction, which can still be relevant when playing into negates or back row. And at number 9, we have number 101 Silent Honor Arc. This is a Water Aqua Xyz that can be made with any 2 level 4 monsters and has 2100 attack and 1000 defense. You can detach 2 materials from itself as cost to target an attack position special summon monster your opponent controls and attach it to this card as one of its materials. Then, if this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, it can detach a material in order to protect itself. The Silent Honor Arc was for years one of the most popular rank 4s in the game, due to being a great removal tool and an annoying protect threat of the board both at the same time. With this card, Diamond Direwolf and Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer, anything without targeting protection could be removed by just getting a couple level 4s out in the field. Players would often play around this card by coming out on turn 2 by putting their boss monsters in defense position on turn 1, just like they do today because of Lightning Storm. In the modern era, Honor Arc has benefited greatly from its newest support with Nash Knight, which gives you a reason to put in the extra deck, even if it's only to resolve that card's effect to be able to absorb an opponent's monster as a quick effect. Out of the other possible targets for Nash, Honor Arc is by far the best, as it's also a pretty good Zeus enabler that can live through a battle phase without activating effects. Due to being an Aqua Xyz that can detach cards for effect, this card may look like a perfect fit for the Tier Element archetype, a series of monsters which can fusion summon using materials from hand, field, and graveyard when sent to the graveyard for effect. However, even if being an Aqua would be greatly appreciated for going into the archetype fusion monster, this card is heavily outclassed in the archetype by another rank 4, which can trigger them at any point instead of only when it's being destroyed by battle or card effect. And at number 8, we have Sacred Tree Beast Hyperyton. This is a rank 9 earth plant monster that can be made with any 2 level 9 monsters. During your turn, you can chain this card's activation to any other card or effect you've activated to target a card in your graveyard with the same type, be it a monster, spell, or trap, and attach that card to itself as a material. During your opponent's turn, this card can negate and destroy a card your opponent is activating by detaching material of the same card type itself by card effect. Hyperyton is a pretty decent negate to end on, since its effect will guarantee you at least 1 negate for every one of your opponent's turns while it sticks around, and unless you cheat it out, it even comes out with enough materials for a couple of turns of monster negates. This card's biggest shortcoming is that it cannot negate during your turn, so it cannot be used very well when going second or to play around hand traps. Nowadays, this card occupies the niche of being the only rank 9 which can actually interact with your opponent during their turn, since VFD was banned, and it'll probably see even more playing extra decks if Konami ever releases an archetype with easily accessible level 9s. In the current metagame though, this card sees played a deck with no monsters from that level through the Rika cards. The Rikas are a plant-type series of monsters which focus on tributing monsters on either side of the field, and they were strong enough to even win the 2022 European Championship when combined with Sun Avalons due to their new support. In that deck, Hyperyton is brought out from the extra deck by Rika Queen Strenna's floating effect, which special summons a rank 5 or higher plant Xyz from the extra deck when tributed and then attaches itself to it, essentially giving you a free negate. And coming in at number 7, we have Downerd Magician. This is a rank 4 dark spellcaster which can be made with any 2 level 4 spellcasters, but it's usually brought out by its alternative summon condition, where it can be Xyz summoned on top of any rank 3 or lower monster during the main phase 2. This card's effects are that it gains 200 attack for each Xyz material it has, and that it inflicts piercing battle damage. Also, if it battles, you have to detach a material from itself after damage calculation. Downerd Magician started out as a great option for rank 3 lower decks to turn their small XCs into piercing beaters for the next turn. This card began to see heavy play with the rise of Burning Abyss decks though. The deck's main boss monster, Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, is a great rank 3 with an amazing floating effect when sent to the graveyard. So putting this card on top of your Dante in the main phase 2 would ensure it would hit the graveyard no matter how Downerd was removed from the field, where before you would lose on a Dante's graveyard effect if it was bounced or banished. This card's usage fell off with the years though, as BA got phased out of the meta and its ability to protect an XC's monster underneath it became less relevant, until the more recent release of another rank up monster. Divine Arsenal 88 Zeus Sky Thunder can be summoned on top of any Xyz monster as long as an Xyz monster has battled that turn, and it has the effect to detach 2 materials from itself to send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. This card single-handedly brought back Downerd Magician into the meta simply as a way to get 1 more material under Zeus after going through something like a Sky Cavalry. Now, despite never being left on the field anymore, Downerd is something you're assured to see in any low-rank Xyz deck just to guarantee their Zeus can use its effect twice. And at number 6, we have Dingirsu, the Orcust of the Evening Star. This is a rank 8 Dark Machine Xyz that can be summoned with either 2 level 8 monsters or a single Orcust Link monster. And if it's special summoned, it can either send a card your opponent controls to the graveyard without targeting it, or attach a banished machine monster as one of its materials. Also, if any card you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can detach 1 material from this card instead. Dingirsu is the life and blood of Orcust decks together with Galatea, and is used for pretty much everything in that deck. When going first, it can be used to recycle banished Orcust, and then link off so that simple skeleton can be brought back during your opponent's turn as more interruption. Going second, it threatens to make any of your archetypal links into a 2600 attack body that can remove cards from the field and lets you go into Zeus without ever having 2 monsters in the field at the same level. Its protection effect also had a really good interaction with Instant Fusion, since it allowed you to protect something like El Shadow Window from being destroyed by its effect, giving you a pretty annoying floodgate. Unfortunately, despite having been such a pivotal piece of the meta before, it sees much less play now due to the Orcust combo enabler being banned. Still, this card can still be seen in decks that can go into rank 8s as a great going second option. The Punk engine, before a lot of its pieces got banned, saw a lot of play with this card in the modern meta game, as it could be used to go into Chaos Ruler and then to either Crystron Halki Fibrax or other rank 8 plays. Even if you're going into Zombie Vampire to get more meals most of the time, the ability to go into great removal such as Dingirsu helped boost this engine's utility even further. And at number 5, we have DDD Deviser King Deus Machinex, an Xyz Pendulum rank 10 monster with 3000 attack and defense. He can be made with any 2 level 10 Fiend monsters, or just ranked up on top of any DDD monster you control. Its effect is that it can, when a monster your opponent controls activates its effect, detach 2 materials from itself, or destroy a Dark Contract card you control, and then attach it to itself as a material. Also, during the standby phase, it can place itself into the Pendulum Zone. While there, if you have another Pendulum monster in your other scale, it lets you special summon your scale, and then place another Pendulum monster from your graveyard into the scale. This card's monster effect is the main reason why it sees play, and it brought back DDD decks into the meta for a short while after its release. Since it's not a once per turn effect, but rather a once per chain, you can easily begin with your opponent's turn with multiple activations ready, as the Dark Contract cards are used as combo enablers and extenders in DDD decks. Not to mention that it's also trivial to summon these strategies, since pretty much every other monster from your extra deck is a DDD, which can be used to summon out Machinex. However, even if having multiple steals like this is a great effect, the deck still sees very little play these days due to the existence of many better combo decks in the meta right now. It can also be extremely risky to pile interactions to a single card with no protection like that, since you lose it all to a single card like Infinite Impermanence or Ghost Ogre. And lastly, you have to worry about taking monsters with floating effects, since detaching them for effect could spell the end of the game for you anyways. And at number 4, we have Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir. This is a rank 1 light machine Xyz that takes 2 or more level 1 monsters to make. Its effects are that when it's Xyz summoned, you can send a Drytron card from your deck to the graveyard. And that if you control a machine ritual monster, you can detach 1 material from itself to negate and destroy a spell trap card activated by your opponent. It can detach cards for effect with its passive effect, where you can use monsters attached to as materials for ritual summons as if you were tributing them on the field. Mu Beta came out just at the right time to ensure Drytron wouldn't leave the competitive scene so soon, as it was released into TCG just after the banning of Union Carrier and the limitation of Ben 10, a couple of really important enablers for the deck. A Foolish Burial is really helpful for this archetype, since all the monsters can be brought back from the graveyard, and even the ritual spell card can recur itself. The negate effect wasn't really relevant when EVO was legal, since that card enabled the deck to get 4 to 6 negates by summoning a Herald of Ultimateness, which was more than enough to win the game. But now that Eva has been banned, it sometimes comes up as the deck is often ending on the archetypal boss monster, or Magic Key Match Musket Batis Buster, both of which make it live. Its effect that helps you ritual summon by using monsters attached to it is also extremely helpful within the archetype, since the ritual spell is not a once per turn, and lets you bring back monsters from the graveyard, letting you bring back Cyber Angel Edatin a couple of times a link climb, or make rank 6s like Beatrice for yet another foolish burial. Even if this card has really no use outside of Drytron strategies, it places this high in this list for being one of the craziest archetypal XCs ever released. And coming in at number 3, we have Outer Entity Nyarla. This is a generic rank 4 Earth Fiend monster with 0 attack and 2600 defense. Its effect is that when it's XC summoned, you can discard any number of cards to increase this card's rank by the same amount of cards discarded. Nyarla can also target a monster in your graveyard, and then detach all monsters attached to itself by effect, and then attach that monster in the graveyard to itself. And lastly, this card's type and attribute become the same as that monster's type and attribute. Nyarla's effect makes it into sort of a universal bridge into XC's rank ups, since it can change its type, attribute, and rank to combo with rank up spells. It could also be used to rank up into monsters that just require a specific type, attribute, and rank to be summoned, such as Ebon Illusion Magician or Full Armored Crystal Zero Lancer. In practice though, this card never needed to trigger any of its effects to go into the best rank up target it had though, and its effect was mostly used in Lunalight decks just to trigger the floating effects of their archetype. This was because by default, this card could already go into Outer Entity Azathoth, one of the most broken XC's monsters ever put into the game. Azathoth has the effect to just completely lock your opponent out of monster effects when it's XC summoned, and due to the way it does not actually activate, its effect can't even be negated by hand traps. In combo decks, it was often used as a way to turn off all your opponent's interactions on your turn by going into Nyarla and then Azathoth before going into your real combo. However, Azathoth was even scarier with the Phantonoid archetype, since it could easily be set up and summoned during your opponent's turn with their archetypal rank up spell, locking them out of doing anything. The only reason Nyarla isn't number 1 is because with Azathoth ban, its main use is being a rank 4 that can detach monsters for effect, and it is heavily outclassed at that niche by the next spot on this list. And at number 2, we have Time Thief Redoer, another generic rank 4 that can, during each standby phase, attach a card from the top of your opponent's deck to itself as a material. It can then, during either player's turn, detach up to 3 materials from itself as effect to trigger the following. If it was a monster, it banishes itself until the end phase. For spells, you get to draw a card. And for traps, it places a card your opponent controls on top of their deck without targeting. Redoer is probably the best generic rank 4 monster released in the modern era, even if it may not look like it at first. This card is an amazing control tool since it can tag itself out with its monster detach effect, which will almost always be live when it's first summoned, and both of its other effects are +1s in card advantage. The only downside is sometimes giving your opponent a free Foolish for a monster with a good graveyard effect, but it's more than worth it with a chance of getting a draw off of a power spell or being a Ryza pretty much every single turn against a trap heavy deck. Redoer is made even stronger when coupled together with Phantom Knight decks due to their archetypal trap monster. Shade Brigandi is easily searched out from the deck with either Bardiche or Boots, can be activated the turn it's set, and gives you an easy way to guarantee Redoer's non-targeting spin effect even against decks that don't run trap cards. The fact that it detaches materials for effect also lets it be used as a combo piece in Lunalight decks, which were so good at spamming rank 4s that Lunalight Tiger is still limited to this day. In the current game, this card now sees play in almost every variant of one of the strongest decks of the format, Tier Elements. Since all the Tier Element monsters trigger their effects to fusion summon when sent to the graveyard by card effect, Redoer is used as a way to get fusions off during your opponent's turn, which can give you spins and negates as interruptions. As long as decks that put a couple of level 4s in the field exist, Redoer will probably always see play. And the only reason why it's not the first spot on this list is because it's outclassed in raw power by the next entry. And finally at number 1, we have Gigantic Spright. This is a rank 2 Dark Thunder monster and can be made with any 2 level 2 monsters, but you can also treat a link 2 monster as a level 2 for its XC summon. Its original attack becomes doubled if it has an extra deck monster as a material, going from 1600 to 3200. Once its effect is activated, you can detach 1 material from a monster you control, then it special summons any level 2 monster from the deck. This effect also locks both players into only summoning monsters that are either level, rank, or link 2 for the rest of the turn. Gigantic Spright is easily the best XC's monster released in years, with a kind of effect that has landed many other cards on the ban list already. Imec Saber Invoker was a rank 3 that could bring out a level 4 Earth Warrior or Beast Warrior monster from the deck, and that was enough to lead to its banning due to how strong and not future-proof that kind of effect is. Gigantic lock-in use seems like it bounced at first, but in practice that restriction is more often a boon than not. Since the effect locks both players out of summoning monsters with a higher level than 2, it means that once Gigantic Spright resolves, you become immune to a lot of devastating hand traps, such as Nibiru, Gamma, and Havness. You can still create a very good board with only access to rank and link 2s out of the extra, since some of the most powerful monsters in the game are within that group anyways, including Spright's own amazing archetypal link 2. This card was usually used to bring out Swap Frog from the deck, and if that goes through, you can end on at least an elf together with Totally Awesome, which becomes untargetable due to elf's protection and can also be brought back to negate to steal a card twice during your opponent's turn. The fact that this card detaches for effect does make it vulnerable to Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, but Sprites can also often play around it by having Spright Red to negate it, or another Xyz monster in the field, since Gigantic can detach its materials from any Xyz on the field at resolution. This last interaction also gives this card a really good combo with Zeus, since if you make it with at least 3 materials, you can activate Gigantic and then chain Zeus to wipe away your opponent's field while also getting Gigantic's effect off to continue your combo. This is extremely strong against archetypes that float when removed from the field, such as Tier Elements, because Gigantic will prevent them from summoning anything due to its lock. There have been many other powerful cards on this list, but none of them are as bannably strong as Gigantic Spright is, and that's why it makes the first place on this list. Alright, and that's the list. If you know of any other Xyz monsters that we may have missed, or have ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.